And welcome back. Previously, when we looked at creating an assignment, we saw that there's an ability to use a rubric. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit this assignment. And let's go ahead and take a look at that rubric. I'm going to create new. And again, when we look at this rubric, we have the option to adjust this accordingly. So if I want to create a rubric, let's just call this a sample rubric. We can then, of course, have a rubric that we can then use for the assignment. And let's just go ahead and create some basic criteria here. So, for example, let's just say add single numbers. And we can say description could be the student added all single-digit numbers correctly. All right, or however you want to phrase that. All right. So again, this is just a basic rubric, and one thing I want to show is that you do have a by default a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale, and it will give you the points over here. If you wanted to add an additional piece to this rubric, you can see in between each of these cells you have a plus sign. So for example, if I wanted to add a 0, I can come and click that plus sign, scooch it over, and you see I now have 2 1s here, and so I can rename this to 0. And so maybe I just put something like fails to demonstrate. And so now I have a 0 scale. Or let's just say you want to remove items from a rubric. Maybe you don't want a 5 scale rubric. Maybe you only want a partial scale rubric. So I'm just going to delete 0. And let's take this 1 out. And maybe I want to do it on a 5-point scale. So I could come in here and I can change this, let's say to 5, 2.5, and 0. And you can see that the points automatically adjust. I now have a 5, 2.5, and 0. So you can set these number values to whatever you want them to be. And again, you can come in here to these descriptors and change them to whatever you want them to be. Now, you do have these criteria and learning objectives that you can add and put those in as well. Criteria is simply just going to add another field in here. And so it lets you to add that in. If I want to remove that, I can just click this criteria row, delete, and it will take that off as well. So again, if I click the add criteria, it adds a row. And if I ever need to remove row, come over here to this little X and delete that. Now, if I hit add learning objectives, that's going to instead pull a learning objective from here. So for example, if I want to look at Common Core Mathematics, and let's just say we look at kindergarten, we can come in here and maybe look at maybe some basic Common Core standards. So maybe I want to pull in a standard directly, so then I can add that as a learning objective in here, and then I can, of course, score that accordingly. So this is just, again, another way you can help create a rubric. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one off. I'm going to leave this a custom creation here. And what I'm going to do to save this is I'm just going to click on Create. And you see it automatically adjusts the max points now from the 3 that I had there before to this 5 because it's now using the rubric to determine the max number of points. If I were to go and add in more rubric items, this would change. So if I want to change this rubric, I'm just going to click on the little rubric icon right here next to Show Students. And I can come in here and add another criteria. It would add more points. And then again, I would see this update to reflect accordingly. And that, of course, the last thing I want to talk about this is this Show to Students. And what this does is allows the students to see the rubric you're using. I recommend leaving this on because anytime you have a rubric, it is always helpful to students so they know exactly what criteria you are judging them on.